coffee in Nanyuki. I'm in Soms, one of my favorite places in Nanyuki. We're here to have breakfast with the Goshen Acquisitions team on our way to Acacia Cove, which is one of their sites. Thank you for the overwhelming response to my last video. An update is that I am managing to scramble some contracts here and there, and I mean, that's happening very well. So the money is coming for me to buy my piece of land, but it got me thinking, am I investing too much, especially for my first piece of land? We're talking about $10,000, and that's just my portion. And it also got me thinking about all the DMs that I get from my young movers about affordability of land and how a young person can afford land. To be quite frank, they're a good client. They allow me to do my thing, but I'm not sure if they'll allow this to make it to the video, because I want to ask some hard-hitting pertinent questions about their plans to give young Kenyans and young Africans access to land ownership as an investment. Today I might get into trouble, but Solomon, I'm coming for you. What are these?
Yeah, these are our gabion fence.
Yeah, can you see this fence?
Yes.
What is this? So Solo, I was telling Leon earlier, I'm not even sure if you're going to agree to answer some of these questions. Yeah, although seeing the fence, I can see where this conversation will go. So Solo, why does your land cost as much as it does?
Well, it's a fair question, and you have to look at each product for its own merit. So size being offered, what value comes along with it besides just the land or the space. Is there clean accessibility? What is the quality of the access roads? Is there power? Is there water? Is the scheme, the subdivision organized? Was it master planned? Or was it just chopped up into squares and rectangles by a surveyor? There's a very big difference. Those all come with costs. And so you have to look at everything in totality, as opposed to just comparing oranges and apples and expecting them to all cost the same.
Again, I'm going to take you back. So do I need a gabion fence? Do I need APs? You talked about a master plan with the best architects in the world. Why?
We could have done our subdivisions by working with a normal planner or a surveyor, as most people out here do. But we chose to work with Burkhartman and Associates. Yeah. I wouldn't say they're the best architects in the world, but they're certainly one of the best in Kenya, because we wanted to honor the site. And if you'll notice, our master plan for Acacia Cove is not in a grid system. No, it's not. All the plots have very unique trapezoid shapes.
Solomon, you're telling me about waste. Yeah, just know I flush a toilet.
But we as land developers have to think about that, most especially when you're next to important geographic features like a dam, which is why we are doing sequential batch reactors, or SBR units, which are basically miniaturized sewage plants, as opposed to the giant central sewage plants.
How about the road also? Because there's a section that was not tarmacked. A very long section was tarmacked, but there's a section that comes here that was not tarmacked.
That's public access road, which we have already asked the county to allow us to upgrade.
Yeah. So in the Cove, you'll have public, what can I say?
Public utility spaces.
Exactly, that. Please explain that.
At some point in the near future, there'll be 80 households within this compound. True. People with families, with children who will need places to play. The parents will need gathering places as a community to interact with one another, so garden spaces. You need space for your solid waste collection, in terms of garbage maintenance and control. All those are what are generally called public utility spaces, and they're actually required in the Physical Land Use and Planning Act processes.
If a young person, 20 to 25, wants to own a piece of land here at Acacia Cove, it's good to dream. Even Solomon's first piece of land, it was a dream that came true. Absolutely. Go back to A Day with a Mover and find out how this man bought his first piece of land in Kansas City. What can these people do, honestly? Because what am I supposed to tell my movers?
Think about getting together with other like-minded youth like yourself. There is no limit to how many of you can own the half acre. We're happy to negotiate friendly terms, specifically for the youth, as defined by the government of Kenya.
Meaning?
You have to be 35 and under.
Leon, you can't. Awesome, Solomon. We should start a youth club, Grand Acres Youth Club.
I agree.
We with Just Ivy. I've been told just start, don't wait.
Yes.
I'm going to write this proposal to Solo.
Done.
And then we see how young people will be able to afford land in Acacia Cove or other locations that...
Absolutely.
Yeah. Everything else looks normal.
Right.
You come here and then you're...
Absolutely.
gabion fenced,
Right.
powered, watered, SBR'd. Okay. Trapezoid door. No, okay. 6 months ago, I had no idea how to speak land. I had no idea even what to say. If I was sold to land for 300K, I'd just buy it because, you know, people are buying it. But now that you've explained to the T what it is that I need to look for, I am very grateful for taking me on this journey.
You're most welcome. Thank you for allowing us the privilege to share our learnings and help you along that journey.
Yeah. My youth club, can we shake on it?
Done.
My friend, that is it.
Done.
Guys, bye.
Greetings. Welcome again to Acacia Cove. This is our amazing master planned community of 80 half-acre parcels, 1.5 kilometers from the tarmac at Juakali town in the Karyonga neighborhood of Nanyuki. This is a project we've been working on for a pretty long time, and I'm super excited to finally share with you that we are ready with transferable title deeds for each of our 80 half-acre parcels. We are already about 60% pre-sold, and over the next few videos, I'm going to be explaining to you exactly what we mean by master planned development. This has been done by Burkhartman and Associates, one of Africa's leading architectural firms, who have done an amazing job on this project. So you want to stay tuned. Check out our website for more details if you're interested. Like I said, we're 60% pre-sold, so you want to take action quickly if indeed you are interested. But on the next video, I'll be going through each of the interventions we're making on the site as far as value addition goes, beginning with our gabion fences. So stay tuned. Hola, welcome back. I am on site on our Acacia Cove compound. I'm going to tell you a little bit about our gabion fences. This is a perimeter fence for our Acacia Cove project or compound here in Karyonga. Like I said before, only 1.5 kilometers from the tarmac at Juakali, right next to a dam, a public dam belonging to Laikipia County. We are actually the only property in this area that shares a boundary directly with Karyonga Dam, which you will notice is clearly beaconed on the opposite end with the yellow beacons installed by the county surveyors. But one of the first things we did as part of our value addition on Acacia Cove is secure our compound. It's a 47.78 acre compound, fully ring fenced. As you can see, the perimeter on the Hola, welcome back. I am on site on our Acacia Cove compound. I'm going to tell you a little bit about our gabion fences. This is a perimeter fence for our Acacia Cove project or compound here in Karyonga. Like I said before, only 1.5 kilometers from the tarmac at Juakali, right next to a dam, a public dam belonging to Laikipia County. We are actually the only property in this area that shares a boundary directly with Karyonga Dam, which you will notice is clearly beaconed on the opposite end with the yellow beacons installed by the county surveyors. But one of the first things we did as part of our value addition on Acacia Cove is secure our compound. It's a 47.78 acre compound, fully ring fenced. As you can see, the perimeter on the front has been done in this style. Hola, welcome back. I am on site on our Acacia Cove compound. I'm going to tell you a little bit about our gabion fences. This is a perimeter fence for our Acacia Cove project or compound here in Karyonga. Like I said before, only 1.5 kilometers from the tarmac at Juakali, right next to a dam, a public dam belonging to Laikipia County. We are actually the only property in this area that shares a boundary directly with Karyonga Dam, which you will notice is clearly beaconed on the opposite end with the yellow beacons installed by the county surveyors. But one of the first things we did as part of our value addition on Acacia Cove is secure our compound. It's a 47.78 acre compound, fully ring fenced. As you can see, the perimeter on the front has been done in this style, which was designed in actual fact by Buchatman and Associates, who came up with the design theme and aesthetics for our project. We wanted to keep an airy, open feeling, which is in keeping with the vibe here in Nanyuki. If you've been to Nanyuki, you understand exactly what that means. If you haven't been, please jump in your car, take a flight from Wilson Airport if you must, get here quickly and appreciate what Nanyuki is all about. And this is what we ended up with: natural stone encaged, as you can see, because that feels more up to speed with the Nanyuki ambience. Our fence happens to be live, electrified for obvious security reasons. We have a lot of livestock that roams freely and widely out here. We wanted to avoid a situation where livestock is roaming into our compound and eating our nice vegetation, which we have already started to plant. The acacias, the fruit trees, which will dot our compound all over the place. And important to note is that this fence is solar powered. There's a solar panel back there next to the green site house where our security generally housed for the time being. So it's on all the time. It doesn't matter if Kenya Power is up or not. That solar panel makes sure that our fence is live always, which means we have a secure compound. Of course, we do have guards on the compound at all times to make sure that we have safety for whatever is going on the inside. So I want to assure you that all the value additions we talk about on Acacia Cove are not pulled out of thin air. Each one was carefully thought about and designed in conjunction with our architects and the engineers and so forth. And in the next video, I'll be sharing a few more details about each of the other interventions we're making on site. So stay tuned. Hello, good evening. I hope you're all doing well. Thank you for joining our live event. We're doing this again. I'm so excited because I get a chance to share our thoughts, our experiences in a live format where you get a chance to ask questions and we can address things a bit more immediately. So thank you for all of you who have tuned in. God bless you, and I hope this session is meaningful and value adding to you. As I have alluded, the topic for today is value addition. Value addition on land, as far as land is concerned, right? Many of us, for all these years, have always seen adverts in the public space about value-added plots or value-added land. What does that mean exactly? It's a great phrase for us marketers and sellers to use when we're trying to get your attention and convince you to buy our products, whatever pieces of land or properties we're selling. But what does that actually mean to you, and is it actually valuable? So I'm going to be going through a few pointers, the main ones, what we at Goshen Acquisitions and Grand Acres mean when we say value addition. It's not a term we use very often because it's a very specific terminology that means very specific things, and not all our products are qualified for value added plots, right? And for those of you who've experienced us, purchased from us, invested through us, you will know what this means. For those of you who haven't yet, we look forward to interacting with you. Hopefully we get a chance to serve you and provide safe investment opportunities for you. And just in case I am a stranger to you, my name is Solomon Wangwe. I am the founder, CEO, and managing director of Goshen Acquisitions Limited, the best land seller in Kenya currently. No matter what anyone else says, that is a simple fact, and you will understand why over time. We also happen to own Grand Acres Limited, which is a fully owned subsidiary of Goshen Acquisitions Limited. It's also a registered trademark of Goshen Acquisitions Limited. So in case you're wondering why my t-shirt says Grand Acres, that's why. Both brands are ours and we wear them proudly. So without much further ado, item number one, when you're out there looking for investment opportunities, especially with land, right? Let's focus on land because that's our specialty. When you're looking for safe and viable investments that make sense, basically, right? If you have X number of shillings saved up, or you are able to borrow X number of shillings from a SACCO or from a bank, or you're able to pull X number of shillings with a group of friends or like-minded individuals, and looking for a good, safe, secure place to invest it, what is the first thing you ought to look for? We at Goshen Acquisitions have learned this over time, interacting with the customer base, that there is a big difference between subdivisions of land that have been done by surveyors or planners versus those that have been done by architects. And this is where the term master planning comes in. Very many of us in the industry use that term loosely, but unless you have worked with a professional planner, specifically one with an architectural background, even if they're not an architect, they are working with an architect, that doesn't really qualify as a master plan per se. I know there'll be some of you who disagree with that view, and that's okay. We're allowed to disagree, but hopefully over time you will understand why we say that. So the first thing you want to look for is master planning. So we don't just chop pieces of land into rectangular shapes or squares and fit as many of them as possible so that we can maximize our exit value when we sell to you, because we're in the business of selling land. It's a simple fact. It's not a charitable exercise. We are in the business of providing safe investment opportunities, which means there's a reward for us land sellers. Therefore, it makes sense that we want to maximize our revenues, maximize our profitability. One of the first ways to do that is to squash as many subdivisions within the mother parcel as possible so that I am selling as much of that land as possible for a profit. Now, if you're going to do that in a typical sense, and many of you who've bought land have noticed this, you will find roads, typically 6-meter wide roads or 9 meters. Those are usually the most generous you'll find. And then alongside the roads, you'll have rectangular pieces of land or square pieces of land, jam-packed. You're stacked like sardines in a can because the land seller has to maximize the sale value. And so when we talk about master planning, things like the topography of the site come into play. Vegetation, are there mature trees on the site that you want to keep alive? Therefore, you move the road around the tree or arrange the plots of land around the tree as opposed to chopping it up. Is there something unique about the site that needs to be honored or taken into consideration, like waterways? All these things come into consideration when you're working with master planning professionals, because they will do what is good not just for you as a seller, but what is good for the environment and for the site itself. And these are very site specific. There is no formula. You have to work with the site itself, its topography, its specific location, its altitude changes and that sort of thing, and therefore you will find very unique subdivision schemes, if you will, out there, those that have been master planned in the proper sense. A great example, and I'll talk about this because these are not theoretical, these are things we do on a daily basis that people out there may not appreciate. But one of the ways we have done this is with one of our projects in Nanyuki, Acacia Cove. Some of you may have seen those in our social media. We've been making noise about that. Title deeds are ready. These are half-acre residential compound plots. We basically had a 47.78 acre mother parcel that we purchased in the name of Grand Acres. We then engaged an architect, which is Buchatman and Associates, or Buchatman and Partners, one of Africa's top architectural firms. They came up together with their team in collaboration with us. They came up with the best use master plan for residential purposes for our mother parcel. And you might see images of those in the back or on our social media handles. As you will notice, there's hardly a single regular shaped rectangle or square plot on that master plan. Why? Because the topography of the site meant that we wanted to honor the gradient towards the dam. That's a very specific feature that we neighbor at Acacia Cove in Nanyuki. We also have an inlet through our property into the dam, so we had to master plan in such a way that we created green spaces around the natural waterways or the inlets so that we do not disrupt the natural flow of water after the rain and that sort of thing. Same with drainage, same with views of Mount Kenya and the like. So when you talk about master plan development, that's what we mean. And so that's one of the first things you want to look for when you're considering investment opportunities. Has there been any thought, critical thought and design put into the production of the piece of land that you're buying? Very important. If there hasn't, you may want to look around a little more. You may want to pass on the opportunity. So it's one thing you want to look for, because this also touches on your long-term value creation, growth of equity, growth of the value of the piece of land. Another simple example, most of us in Nairobi will understand this. There's a very big difference in pricing today for land in Karen or Muthaiga, Old Muthaiga, or Runda versus other parts of Nairobi, which were not necessarily planned or controlled or restricted in use the same way as the ones I've just mentioned. The reason, simple reason, is that value was protected over time, and now you will pay premium for the nice green leafy suburbs because they did take into consideration issues around density, how many plots, the minimum sizes, shapes, public spaces and utilities and that sort of thing. So you want to look out for that. First thing we look for ourselves when we're buying. So that's point number one. The other one I like to look out for are the supporting features, and that includes things like fencing. Has there been a development of security fencing, perimeter fencing? Common term used. Sometimes you'll buy land that hasn't been fenced, and that's okay if that meets your purposes and you are prepared to fence your own piece of land. But when you're talking about long-term value protection and creation, perimeter fencing becomes important. Security features, is it secure? Is it easily dismantled or damaged by others who may not have the best intentions? If this hasn't been done, you want to pay attention to that and be conscious that you may have to make certain interventions on your own in the future, and there's cost implications to that. Again, with our project in Acacia Cove, we did security fencing, solar powered, so it's alive 24/7, which is great, and we don't have to pay power bills to Kenya Power. But then the other thing we did on a section of, of the piece of land, we did gabion fences. These are steel structured cages with natural stones stacked on the inside. A very beautiful, very natural vibe. The stones were sourced from a local quarry, so it speaks of the local environment itself. And this was was done because it was actually designed by Buchertman and partners as part of the design language they were developing for the whole master plan, right? So in the future, as people start to build their own houses, you will find elements of the gabion fences in those buildings. You'll also find them in the beacons, which should be done in a couple of weeks or so. And all these things contribute to the aesthetics, the appeal of the place over time, and therefore the long-term value. So you want to take note of things like that. Fencing, has it been done? Has it not been done? Is the price I am paying reflective of that or not? The other one I'll mention, and this will probably be the third one that I'll speak about, because it does touch on the perimeter fencing and security fencing, is a gatehouse. This is something that we are particularly intent on doing for all our projects going forward, simply because it makes sense to have housing for security at the gate that brings together the fencing, controlling access into your property. It's also a great way for us as land sellers to sort of set the tone or tease you on what the future buildings will look like. So if the gatehouse looks like crap, you're probably going to be forgiven for expecting crap in the future. So we like to pay attention to things like that. If there's a great looking gatehouse, it doesn't mean that it's 100% trustable, but it's a great indicator for intention, attention to detail, and all these things that do affect your future valuation. I know it's something that we in the space are conscious of, and the psychological impact of this. It's why there are so many projects that, someone said to me the other day that Kenya is littered with projects that started out great. I won't mention them by name, but most of us are aware of them in Nakuru, Kiambu, Eldoret, at the coast, pretty much any corner of the country that people are interested in investing in. People will do, or the developer, I should say, will do amazing looking gatehouses because that attracts people. And then after that, nothing is done, or they don't pay attention to the rest of the building and the execution on workmanship as they did on the gatehouse. It ends up being disappointing. So it's a bit of a catch-22, I would say. If there's a poor looking gatehouse, I may not be too excited to invest. If there's a great one, it's another check off my list that these people are critically thinking about the design aspect, the aesthetics, because it does touch on my future valuation. But I'm still going to be wary, and I'm still going to be on their case about the execution and the rest of the interventions they make on the property. And that brings me to the next one, which is access roads. What does your access look like? This is a big one, because if you do not have clean access to your property now, when will you ever have it? I know a lot of us in the industry are sort of tied, our hands are tied, because infrastructure development really ought to be the domain or the responsibility of government, whether it's central government, national government, or county governments. And the reason for that is because these are very expensive things to do. If a private developer has to do all these things, they have to recover it from the sale of the plots or the product, whatever it is they're creating, and that skews values drastically. We've seen that happen in Nairobi, Kiambu, Nakuru, and elsewhere. Why? Because, simply put, government has failed in most instances in keeping up with demand for infrastructure as far as human settlement is concerned. And so this is a critical thing you want to look out for, because if I sell you a piece of land that doesn't have clean access because I'm telling you that the government's going to do it, can you really trust that? I'm not government. I can't guarantee that the government will do it. And strictly speaking, government's prioritization of infrastructure projects has to do with density of populations, right? They have X amount of money to work with from national budgets. Therefore, it makes sense that they will think about where there are more people to affect with the investment than others. So certain parts of the country will go unserviced for decades. And so if I'm going to sell you a piece of land in an undeveloped part of the country, showing you a government hived road that doesn't exist on the ground, what am I doing in the interim to give you clean access to the property? Because no one can promise you when government is going to do it. And therefore, should I be investing there now or not? Very important. And even then, what quality of road am I providing? One of the things we did in our project, which we just sold out in Imbuko, is all-weather Maram surface roads. I would love nothing more than to do tarmac roads to all our sites, but I don't have World Bank funded budgets to spend. And if I did, I'd need to sell you that half-acre piece of land for nearly 50 million shillings to recover the cost of the infrastructure, which doesn't make sense, right? So we have to be critical about how we go about providing clean accessibility to our customers. And you as a customer needs to be aware of these aspects as you're doing your site visits. What is the quality of the road surface that I'm using? Can I drive there when it's raining? I actually love to scout for land during the wet seasons because the rain will betray good drainage versus poor drainage, right? So if I cannot access the place during the rainy season, I might not want to own this piece of land because my accessibility cannot be seasonal. I have to be able to use my land when I want to without issue. And so things like all-weather Maram roads become important. Maram roads are great because they allow you to traverse the surface of the land, even in the wet season, because your wheels have traction. You don't have warps and bumps in the road or potholes, if you will, because the surface is harder. And this is if the road is done well. You need to make sure that they've worked with a qualified engineer to design and execute on the road. It's not just a question of pouring Maram on the surface. Very often you have to excavate the topsoil and refill it with Maram and compact, back up again, compact, and make sure that even big trucks delivering your building equipment will not kill the road. So very important thing to look for. Another great thing to look for as far as access roads are concerned is the size or the width of the road. As a standard practice at Goshen Acquisitions and Grand Acres, all our roads, we've never done it any different, are 12 meters wide. 99.9% of the time, 12 meters wide. This is typically about 3 meters wider than is required, especially when you're dealing in agricultural zones, freehold land, and that sort of thing. But we always allow for 12 meters, which is 3 meters extra. That's a land that we could sell in plots that we give up to accessibility, because we understand that in the future, as infrastructure is developed, that eats into your road surface. Things like drainage, water supply, sidewalks, curbs, all those go on the public access road. And so what we want to avoid is a situation that we have all witnessed or experienced at some point in our lives here in Kenya, is that you're leaving your house or your relative's house or your friend's home and you can't join the road because the road is too narrow for two cars to use at the same time. So you have to let the other guy pass before you exit. This is because people do not give proper consideration to the width of the road, because they want to sell as much as possible, because it's a profit-making enterprise. It's not a charitable exercise. Always keep that in mind. As nice as we may seem, even at Goshen Acquisitions and Grand Acres, we have to make it work commercially. It's a business. We have to look out for the business concerns. So you want to be critical in your thinking, critical in your questions. You need to be informed and make sure that you're getting value, because most people out there simply want to exit and sell as much as possible without giving concern to what value you get in the long term. Right, very important one. Which brings me to water supply. This is a sensitive one because water supply, just like roads, is supposed to be handled by government. It is in Nairobi Water and Sewer Services. Those are provided by former municipal authorities. In the cases where we don't, in parts of Nairobi, we're used to buying water. But if you're buying land in a corner of Nanyuki or Nakuru or Kitengela, where there is no public utility for water, what are you supposed to do? Where are you going to get your water for domestic or commercial use, right? Ask those questions. You have to be sure that you're going to have water, whether supplied by the developer, the land seller, whether your community of buyers at some point will get together and sort out accessibility to water, or whether the government authorities actually have a plan in place to provide you water. You need to be aware. And therefore, is the price I am paying now reflective of that or not? Very important thing to look out for. Again, one of the things we're having to do now as Goshen Acquisitions and Grand Acres is drilling boreholes on our sites to provide water for our compounds. It's a very specific procedure one has to go through. You need to get permits from NEMA, from WARMA, from the county authority. In some cases, they actually require you to have public participatory exercises so that the community gives you letters of no objection, and that is specific to sites. We just experienced that in Imbuko, where we drilled a borehole to provide water to 77 households, and we were required to do a public participation hearing just to get feedback from the community about whether or not they object to us drilling a borehole, especially in instances where there are other boreholes in the neighborhood. Very important. It's not just a question of paying a driller to come and sink a hole. You have to get permission from the authorities, and even then there's no guarantee that your driller will strike water, right? So you want to make sure that these things are communicated to you clearly. Who is going to own that utility? Is it you as a member of the community, or is it a separate company that you have to pay a bill to on a monthly basis based on your usage and that sort of thing? So very important, because water is life. Without water, you can't do landscaping, you can't wash your dishes, you can't do anything. And it's not sustainable to plan to buy water for your use every single time. So very important one to look out for. Okay, so my team says I should take a 5-minute break and have some water, so that's what I'm gonna do. If you have any questions, please send those through. We're on Twitter. You can send us a message on Facebook, Instagram. Go to our website, check us out, look at the information. I'll be happy to answer your questions if you have any, and we'll be right back. Hello. One of the amazing things or cool things I think we're doing here on Acacia Cove is ensuring security during the preparation of the site as well as into the construction phase. As is commonly done here in Laikipia, we actually have our own private guards on site day and night. We also have support from the local administration police who do routine patrols in our site and around the compound just to make sure that law and order is being abided by. And so this is another consideration when you're talking about controlled development. Security is an important factor, and I look forward to updating you guys again as this progresses. If you are interested in getting your piece of Acacia Cove before they are sold out, give us a call as quick as you can, 0700010001. Again, that's 0700010001. You can WhatsApp on the same number or send us an email. Get the brochure, book your site visit if you must, but take action before we are sold out. Cheers.
Oh, 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 oh.
Greetings and welcome back. Solomon Wangwe of Grand Acres and Goshen Acquisitions Limited. I happen still to be on site here at Acacia Cove, which is what we have named our amazing compound of 80 half-acre plots, professionally master planned by one of the best architectural firms in Africa, known as Buchatman and Associates, as I've shared before. But I just wanted to highlight that each one of our half acres, when we talk about value-added parcels of land or plots of land, if you will, this is what we mean at Grand Acres. It's not just a random subdivision of land into smaller pieces like eighths and quarters to sell. What we're talking about here is site and service, which means besides the land, half acre, properly beaconed and duly registered and titled by the government of Kenya, we provide access roads. In our case, because of the master plan, we're going for cobblestone standards, which means not only do you have all-weather access, but it's aesthetically pleasing to look at and be on because of the ambience and the vibe here in Nanyuki, which is a natural environment, natural vibes. As you can see right behind me, we have an outcrop of acacia trees which line the Karyonga Dam, which we directly share a boundary with. We wanted to honor the site and keep it natural, as opposed to making it feel different and overimposed, right? So that's one of the key things that we mean when we talk about value addition, is access roads along with drainage, along with culverts to control and channel the water runoff to the proper places without damaging the site. We also mean power provision. We are only 200 meters from the closest transformer at Cobb's Resort, right in front of me. So power is not far. Because of the density of our compound, we do have to have our own transformer on site, which will be provided. The other thing we're talking about is water. We actually had permits approved for borehole drilling out here, which we have to redo because of the length of time it has taken us to get up to this point. But beyond that, which is most critical for me in my humble opinion, is how you're dealing with waste and waste management. Where is all your waste going? Is it just seeping into the ground through septic tanks? Because this part of Nanyuki is not yet sewered. I mean exactly. If you see an advertisement by Goshen Acquisitions, Grand Acres, or whoever else out there who's selling land and they say value-added plots, what should that mean and why should you care, right? So if you're just joining, thank you for joining. Welcome to the live session. If you have questions along the way, feel free to send them through. But we've already discussed a number of points that I highly recommend you look for whenever you're visiting sites, considering investment options for yourself, most especially when they've been advertised as residential, commercial, or value added. What needs to be in place, and is it good value for you? First one, master plan. Don't show me a subdivision scheme. That is not a master plan. Master plan involves more than just subdivision. It includes considerations around the topography of the site, its specific location, paying homage to its unique geographic features, most especially when it's next to or around sensitive features like waterways, dams, oceans, and the like, right? Very important. Second thing, fencing. Why is that important? Because it has to do with controlling access to your private property after you own it. Who is sorting that out? Is the land developer offering it or not? Is the price I am paying for that piece of land reflective of that or not? Along with that is a gatehouse. Usually ties in the fencing aspect, because this is where you house your security. It's where you also control exit and entry by individuals into the compound. Very critical thing. I'm sure we can all appreciate that intuitively. Gated communities tend to be a lot more desirable because of the controlled aspect, especially around accessibility. The other thing I mentioned was water. Who is supplying the water? Is it coming from a borehole? Is it coming from the municipality or county authority? Who is paying for it? Who is maintaining it? If the borehole pump goes out, who is paying to get that fixed? Or Are you just giving us the stuff and disappearing? Very important one to look out for. And then I closed with access roads. Accessibility, very important. Are you able to access your piece of land in the dry season as well as in the wet season? If the answer is no, I might want to pass on that unless there's going to be specific interventions, preferably contractual, by the land seller, that they will provide you all-weather accessibility. So those are the points I've already covered. If you have questions about those, please send them in. And one of you has actually asked a question about when is the best time. I think this is says Obolo Bosu, Mr. Coffee. Thank you for tuning in. You asked a question: when is the best time to build, and what amenities are absolutely necessary to build once the land is fully purchased? Great question. I mean, for me, it's a basic amenities, we usually call them when we're advertising. That has to do with, again, accessibility. You need clean access, otherwise you can't get your building materials to site, especially when it's raining. You also need security, because when you're dropping your building materials on your site, who is watching them? These are valuable items: steel, cement, ballast, equipment. Who is watching those? Your security has to be sorted out, so it has to be in place. You also need water. Obviously, you can't make cement mixture or concrete without water. So where are you getting the water from? Those are absolutes. You cannot cut corners on that. And then obviously power. A lot of times you will need equipment for your building site that has to be powered. So if the power is not coming from Kenya Power, do you have a generator in place? Who is providing that generator? Is it the land developer? Is it yourself? And there is no wrong or right answer on this. Again, because we're talking about value addition. So if we're talking about these aspects from a perspective of value addition, is the price I am paying for this piece of land now reflective of whether or not I have access to these basic amenities? That's all we're saying. So if I'm going to sell you a piece of land that's a 50 by 100, that's a common size today. Someone bought a 20-acre block of land, chopped it up into 50 by 100s, no master planning by an architect to think about communal space, controlling accessibility, the density. You're basically going to be right next to each other with no space. There's no water, there's no power supply, there's nowhere for the water to go when it rains in terms of drainage, and even worse, things around waste treatment, which I'll cover shortly. So very important things to look out for. I hope that answers your question, Coffee, and keep them coming. So moving on, one of the other critical elements you have to look for when you're buying land and assessing value, because this is, again, is about value. Am I getting value for the 250,000 shillings I'm paying for the 50 by 100 plot that has been advertised as residential or future residence, and yet it is still zoned freehold agricultural, right? That's a context. Waste treatment. This one I love to talk about, especially when we're talking about sizes of subdivisions. If you're buying a 50 by 100 or a 100 by 100, which is a quarter acre, there's going to be so many of you in a restricted space. Where is your waste going? You're all washing dishes in the kitchen, you're all taking showers or baths, hopefully you are. You're all using washrooms and toilets. Where is your waste going? And you're also producing solid waste, which is the stuff you take to the garbage dump. Who is collecting that? Where is it going? Are those questions answered? Very critical. And this issue of waste treatment is especially sensitive because it touches on the ecology, the environment. NEMA is very strict on this thing these days. Actually, they are trying to discourage people from doing soak pits or pit latrines, because over time, all that waste is just seeping into the underground aquifers or waterways. And so if your neighbor is drilling boreholes and there's 200 of you on 50 by 100s dumping all your waste into the ground. Does that make sense? No, it doesn't. And that's crap, literally and figuratively. There's no value. There's no value there, right? I paid 250K for my 1/8, but it's not valuable. No one's going to want that situation in the future. And I know it's a harsh thing to say, especially because many of us in the business are selling 50 by 100s. Many of you have already purchased 50 by 100s. I had a conversation with a customer who said they've purchased about 80 50 by 100s all over the country from different land sellers over the years. And they said, what am I going to do with all this land? None of them are fenced. None of them have all-weather access. None of them have waste treatment. None of them have access to water. There's no power. What am I supposed to do? And the simple answer is you either have to flog those pieces of land and consolidate your money and buy something a bit more valuable in terms of your ability to make profitable or sensible use of it, or at best, you have 8 sites in which your family can bury you when you're dead because you own the land. This is an important motivation in the African context, is everyone needs a place to be buried when you're dead. You need your own soil, your own piece of land. It's a very primal instinct that we all have that's not really talked about much these days, your security blanket for retirement and so on. But you know, if you're buying without critically thinking about value addition, you've simply secured yourself 8 burial sites that no one can evacuate your coffin from. Is that really good value for all the money you're spending? I think not, right? So next point on this, very critical, waste treatment. You have to know where your waste is going to go. You cannot all be sinking soak pits on your 50 by 100s. It just doesn't make sense. I may even propose that in that instance, you're destabilizing the topsoil or the grading that you're all building on by sinking holes, you know, for your waste, for the borehole, for whatever else. So make sure that you have addressed that properly. Otherwise, it's not good value for you. Same goes for solid waste. Where are you taking your trash? These days, if you're going to subdivide land in those sizes, in most counties, strictly speaking, and this is something, again, we're speaking about from experience. This is not theoretical. It's very easy for me as a land seller to subdivide 50 by 100s if I have a 50-acre block, because I get 300 plus 350 plots to sell for cheap, and they move, and I make a ton of money. Very often I'll make 4 to 8 or 10 times what I paid for that piece of land, because it's cheap for you, you don't feel it, but it's terrible value for you if I have not provided you the infrastructure. So it's not something that I like to address, because a lot of times it's viewed as a criticism of our contemporaries in the industry. But I'm speaking about this as a simple human being who is in the business of trying to provide value and also looking for value, because I buy land. We have to buy land in order to have it to sell in the future. These are all things that we look for. Distance from the road, if it's not all-weather access. Where is your waste going? You have to make sure that these things are addressed, because whenever you're subdividing land and creating densities in 50 by 100s or quarters, the county authorities actually require you to provide for waste treatment, both for solid waste and liquid waste. Liquid waste, or gray water is the technical terminology for sewer. And if that has not been provided for, very often you will not get permissions from the authorities to subdivide the piece of land for the use that you are proposing or advertising to the market. So if I'm going to advertise to you a residential piece of land, I also need to show you the approvals, and I also need to prove to you that I am meeting the conditions that were imposed on us for getting those permissions. Very important. Otherwise, I'm not selling you any value. Next point, power. That's a simple one to understand. Is there access to power? Power is actually a simpler one to solve because Kenya Power is very deliberate about distributing power throughout the country, especially under the rural electrification program, which in its heyday really opened up the country to power supply. You simply make your applications, they make an assessment on the density of the compound, meaning how much power demand has to be met, and they will put that infrastructure in place. If the land developer like ourselves pays for the service, in many cases you will need dedicated transformers for your compound, if there's many of you in that compound. If there's no power from Kenya Power, maybe it's being supplied through solar panels. Either way, you need to know where your power is coming from. If the land seller is not providing it for you, if we're not doing it for you, can you afford to install your own solar panels on your building to supply yourself your own power? Very important thing to think about because it touches on your budgeting and your ability to realize your dream and the purpose for which you bought that piece of land. Okay? Next one, I would say just as important, if not more important, is public utility. Public utility is a technical terminology for public spaces. So in many instances when we're subdividing land, they require us to change use from agricultural to residential or commercial, whatever the application requires. As an example, we're doing an amazing project in Naivasha called Ol Kekun. You'll find it on our website. This is a mixed use development already approved by Nakuru County for change of use from agricultural to commercial and residential. So commercial on the road frontage, residential in the back, and even the residential is done in different densities. So in the middle we have medium density, or rather high density residential. In the back we have medium density. These are all on 50 by 100, but they are leasehold properties with a proper zoning, and we have the documents from all the authorities, including RD House, to prove that we have the proper user or zoning. Don't let anyone tell you that they're selling you a residential piece of land without a proper user in place, because it's a lie, and this will impede your ability to get permits to build on it later. So very important to think about that. Public spaces will very often be required by the authorities to be hived out of the mother parcel for the benefit of the community you are creating. So things like garden spaces, things like schools or police posts for security, or a commercial development, depending on the density. Again, this is something that is usually prescribed by the authorities in response to an application by whoever is subdividing the piece of land. But regardless, if you're going to buy residential or future holiday home, whatever the case may be, these are all required for permits to be issued. Again, this is one of the things that makes your title deed meaningful, because a title deed in and of itself is absolutely worthless if none of the documents that produced it were acquired properly, right? And I've done videos on this before. You can check out our archives if you're curious about that. But public spaces have to be accounted for, because all these people need places to gather. Children need places to play safely, not on the road. In some cases, you have to create room for security, police posts, and the like. So I always like to make sure, as I'm buying land, they've given me the site map, they've given me a copy of their compliance certificate, as well as the master plan, just to make sure that all those spaces have been taken care of. And finally, landscaping and beaconing. I know we're all familiar with beacons. In Kenya, they're typically done as flat, pancake-shaped concrete things with a number on the top. How has that been done? We tend to have a different approach on that out of experience. You know, my team and I once spent 2.5 hours, solid 2.5 hours, hunting for those flat pancake beacons in the bushes once. And we swore we would never do that again. And we also would never subject our customers to that sort of mess. So we tend to do these giant pillars. They're 7 foot tall. Half of it is planted underground and cemented. It'll have our logo on both sides. It'll have the LR number on the top, or whatever reference we're using to mark your specific property on it. These come with costs. So if I'm paying for a piece of land, I like to look out for those things. Is the price I'm paying sensible relative to these amenities or not? Along with that, obviously, is landscaping. It's usually the last consideration, because in the process, especially when you're dealing with compounds where there will be active construction, the land developer would delay that until the end because of damage that would be incurred if trucks are dropping stones. There's lots of workers on site who may trample over vegetation and that sort of thing. But you need to know whether or not the land developer is going to sort that out or not, so that you can plan for it if you intend to have a landscaped environment, or you can use that as a point of negotiation with your seller. I'm happy to pay X if you throw in the landscaping, if you throw in waste treatment and that sort of thing. So I hope those 10 or so pointers make sense to you. These, in our experience, are the questions that most of our customers will ask when we're selling land, especially when we're selling residential specific use land, as opposed to freehold agricultural blocks of land, which are a bit, less specific in use. I mean, it doesn't take a genius to know that if I'm buying a 10-acre or 5-acre piece of land towards Amboseli, that it'll probably be for agricultural use more immediately, and then I'll build something later, unless I have provided all-weather access road, there'll be power, there'll be water, blah, 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 right? If you're going to be buying a piece of land that's 50 by 100 or 100 by 100, it's obvious that piece of land is meant for residential or commercial purposes. Therefore, do I have the amenities I need to make use of that piece of land appropriately? And this is where value addition all comes in. And I hope that makes sense. If you have questions, please send them through. I'll spend the next few minutes answering as many questions as I can, and I'd appreciate your engagement in that regard. So we have a question here from Brian. How does one go about getting power access from KPLC when buying land? How has Goshen gone about doing this for its customers? So typically you have to make an application to Kenya Power. You fill a form. They will send an engineer out to site to make an assessment about the site location, its proximity to the closest transformers, closest power lines, and then they will give you a quotation on the cost, depending on how many posts they have to erect to get the power lines to you, whether or not you need your own transformer and that sort of thing. So that's a typical process, and they like to tie this to LR numbers, so they will ask you for your land parcel details. Makes sense because your power bills are usually assigned to a land registry number anyway, even in Nairobi, so that makes sense. And so that's the typical process. At Goshen Acquisitions, in the early days, we didn't bother with power because we generally sold huge parcels of land for agricultural use or for speculative purposes, and the price was reflective of that, right? Again, value addition is relative to what I'm paying for now versus what other people are paying for all the amenities. That's all we're comparing, right? So today, for instance, with our project in Naivasha, Olkekun, or Acacia Cove in Nanyuki, we are providing power, not just for domestic use for each user, but we also install solar power for our security fencing, because in the event of disruption of power supply by Kenya Power, your security cannot go to sleep. In fact, that is when you need your security up and running. And so these are some of the things we're doing as Goshen Acquisitions and Grand Acres for our customers particularly in Acacia Cove and Olkekun in Naivasha.
There's a question there on the WhatsApp from Iron Pulse.
Iron Pulse, where is that?
Yeah.
Iron Pulse. Okay, there's a question here from Iron Pulse. How is a common property, for example, on your Nanyuki project owned? Is the whole development on one title with subleases and shares? That's a great question. Iron Pulse, thank you. No, our properties are all individually titled. You do not have to purchase subleases. And that term is very loose because that could mean any number of things. But specific to your question, our Nanyuki project, Acacia Cove, all our parcels, half acre, are individually titled. So these are not subleases. And our common spaces, so the space for the garden, the pavilion, the green spaces for green leagues for vegetation, as well as the site for waste management, the security gatehouse, and so on. All these properties will be registered in the name of a homeowners association, where all our customers, all the buyers of these half acres will be shareholders of, and those public utility spaces will in essence be owned by the whole compound. And this is a great way to ensure that these spaces don't get grabbed by unscrupulous people in the future, as we have seen happen all over the country, especially after the advent of the county authorities. A lot of these public spaces got grabbed by influential people, and all of a sudden you find that a site that was set aside for fire station, we saw this happen in Runda under the previous administration, where the fire station site was being used by a private individual to sell cars. This is what happens when you don't tighten the logistics or the structures around who owns the public spaces. So in our cases, both in Acacia Cove and Olkekun, same with Imbuko 3, where we have public utility spaces, these will be owned in common by the home ownership association, and that guarantees that nothing happens with those spaces other than what was supposed to happen with them. I hope that answers your question. That's a great question, Iron Pulse. Thank you. We have another question here. What's more profitable, buying land or developed property, example, a house, building, apartment? What's more profitable? Wow, that's a very complex question to answer. And a simple way to answer that is it depends, right? Land can be extremely profitable, especially if you buy in the right location at great prices, and great prices often come with volume purchases. So if you're buying large tracts of land in a place that's going to develop quickly in the near future or in the medium term, that can be extremely profitable. We have experienced this ourselves. We did this in Konza, and I've shared this story before. There's a piece of land we bought in 2011. We paid 300K per acre for this piece of land. Today, our neighbors are selling for nearly 5 million shillings an acre. That's about 11 years. If you do the math, that's a pretty aggressive rate of return, growth rate. That's extremely profitable, especially if you're able to sell all of it for that price now. But that means you have to have the appetite in time to sit and wait, right? Which is very different from developed property, which you could lease immediately, rent to someone for passive income. So it just depends on what investment flavor you're looking for. Are you looking for capital gains in the long term, or are you looking for passive income for the immediate term? Capital gains are also possible with developed property, but I find they tend to be outperformed by land capital gains. But you have to be patient, right? So that's something you would need to assess on an individual basis. But thank you for that question. And I think that's from Golds of Beauty. Golds of Beauty Place. Thank you. We have another question here. Does the county government ensure that land sellers provide amenities for its buyers? The answer is yes and no. Yes, because the policies require that certain amenities be provided or allowance for them be provided before compliance certificates are issued by the governing authority. So things like public utility, space, garden, space for a school, depending on how many compounds you're creating with your subdivisions, right? And these are all part of the Physical Land Use and Planning Act, which is supported by other policies on a county basis. Yes, the county governments do require these. Is it enforced? That is the question that is difficult to answer. My thing is this: understand what the law says and require that of the land seller. Regardless of whether or not the county authority is enforcing it, you have a responsibility as a private investor to get what you are required to get for the land you're buying. You cannot close your eyes and say, well, the county government didn't enforce, the seller didn't do it. Those may be factual, but the truth is that you as an investor have a responsibility to make sure that you're getting value for what you're paying for. So be informed, understand what the policy says for your county. We have 47 counties now. Very many counties have very specific policies that differ from one another, and that is their constitutional right. They have the mandate to decide issues around zoning or user, land use, and the likes. So understand what that is for your county and make sure that your land seller has provided that to you. If they're unwilling or unable to, then you may have to look elsewhere for a valuable investment option, right? Next question. How does one prevent public spaces from being grabbed by corrupt individuals in government? I think I've already addressed that. That's a great way to do it, is have the land registered to private entities with all the users as shareholders. Sometimes it's not possible. You have to surrender those to the government authorities, but vigilance by the community is the last defense. You just have to be aware. You can't chalk that responsibility off to someone else. But the best way to do it is to have that registered in the name of your homeowners association, where you are all shareholders. And next question, and this is from Ahadi Group. Hey, Ahadi Group, thank you for your question. When you talk about controlled development, I believe that touches on homeowners association. Can you speak more, elaborate on that? I think I just have. In essence, a homeowners association's job is to regulate the controls that were put in place by the land developer or the community themselves, right? You want to ensure that your public spaces are used for that purpose. You want to make sure that this guy doesn't come and put up a stinky pig farm next to my beautiful holiday home by violating the use. You also want to have the homeowner association handle things like maintenance of the public spaces, landscaping, who is paying for security, and those sorts of considerations. And one more, is it possible to know what building restrictions exist when buying land? This is from Jennifer in the diaspora. Yes, it is possible, especially when change of use has been acquired. That will usually be contained on the, I believe that's a PPA 2. The PPA 1 is what we as land sellers will send to the county authority asking for permission to change use. PPA 2 will be their response to that, and it will typically have conditions or conditional approvals, including things like maximum heights for the building, how deep I can go if I want to do basements or not, and that sort of thing. So yes, it's possible to know. Your land seller should have that information. If they don't, for me, it's a red flag. If they're willing to find that out for you, that's the proper way to go about it. But you can also find out directly from the county authority, and that is the county planner's office. Trish has retracted their message.
No, go down again. She's written it again.
Okay, so we have a comment here, question from Trish. Do the plots in Karyunga have the same value as the ones in Acacia Cove? The answer is no. Karyunga covers a span of nearly 7 kilometers, right? So you have to be specific. What side of Karyunga? If you're touching the tarmac in Karyunga, the value will be very different from those that are not touching. Again, with Acacia Cove, this is a fully serviced compound with all the amenities. You will not find any other compound like Acacia Cove in Karyunga at all, at least as of today. Right, so the question you're asking is a simple one to answer, which is no. You have to look at what value is being provided in order to determine what the value should be. Again, always compare oranges with oranges, apples and apples, and you'll be safe.
Some customers there.
Edwin Kidula, is the land going to be controlled development? In Imbuko. Yes. And I believe Edwin is one of our beloved customers in Imbuko 3. Yes, Edwin, you should know this by now, since you have already purchased your land. Yes, Imbuko 3, this was residential. We provided all the documents. It's controlled. You cannot use it for commercial farming purposes. You cannot do, apartment buildings. It's very specific. Actually, your building is also restricted to eco villas, which is a very specific building standard and type that is sensitive to the environment. You cannot go more than ground plus one, right? Meaning you can't have 3 floors. You can only do ground floor and 1 floor. You cannot go underground either. And yes, very controlled for Imbuko. Not all the properties in Imbuko are controlled the same way, so it's specific to the person who's selling, the user permissions they acquired. Those are very conditional and they have specified controls.
Talk a little bit about Acacia Cove.
In that context, yes, Acacia Cove. So Richie, part of the team, just asked about Acacia Cove. Exactly the same. So Acacia Cove, our application to the county was for residential use, and that is indeed what will happen. It's very controlled. You will not be able to go more than ground plus one in certain zones of the site. In other zones, you will be restricted to just ground because certain parts of the site are slightly higher than others, and we don't want anyone's view of Mount Kenya blocked. So depending on what side of Acacia Cove you're building, you will be restricted to ground or ground plus one so that you can see above your neighbor who is in front of you. Same with Olkekun, which is in Naivasha. Very, very specifically controlled.
Now you can go to WhatsApp, back to WhatsApp.
There's more on WhatsApp?
Yeah, number 8 and 9.
Okay, 2 more questions. Do you consider land banking as one of rewarding investment in this era? This is from Abu on Instagram. Thank you, Abu, for that question. Yes, I do consider land banking as rewarding. Land banking will always be rewarding. The implication here is that you have time, you're patient. Land banking is not a get-rich-quick scheme. You have to buy knowing that you're waiting for something to happen, for conditions to change in the market, for demand for space to increase as population sizes increase, or as migration happens from urban to rural, or vice versa. No one can predict exactly when those things happen, so you have to be patient. Your premium here is time. So yes, absolutely. If you have the right mindset and you're patient with your investment, land banking, very difficult to go wrong with. That's my humble opinion. And then the last one, are there any mandatory amenities on your leasehold titles from government? Mandatory amenities, yes, I think I've touched on that. The amenities are made mandatory in the process of you getting your leases. When you're talking about leases, leasehold titles. right? The user is specific. So if you're getting change of use, and I'll use Olkekun, our project in Olkekun as an example, in Naivasha. This is a mixed use development, means that there are several zonings or users for the same mother parcel that we have subdivided. One of those is commercial on the road front. This is right on the Naivasha-Nakuru highway, directly across from the brand spanking new Safari Center development, where Art Cafe Market and Naivas are. You literally cross the road to there. So if you're on that side, feel free to drive by and take a look at the site. We're just about to break ground on our perimeter fencing and gatehouse there. So on the front, we have commercial for obvious reasons. In the back, we have residential. And on one corner of the commercial right there, on the commercial zone, we actually have an industrial or light industrial user for a petrol station. That's a very specific control. You cannot build commercial space on that. It has to be used for a petrol station. It's a light industrial, right? Versus the back, which is residential. So, I hope that makes sense. It's very specific. All right, one more question. Sorry?
One last question from Instagram.
Aziza.
This one.
Does the land value addition affect how much taxes we pay?
Does the land value?
Does the land value addition affect how much taxes we pay? So I think maybe what she's asking is, do I have to pay more once the value is added?
Repeat the question, so please repeat the question.
Does the land value addition affect how much taxes one has to pay? And by taxes, you mean rates and rents, the recurrent taxes, not the transfer tax. Yes, to an extent. Although what we've experienced with Olkekun is once you issued your leases, they are valued and you are told what your rates and rents will be in advance. So regardless of what we do on the site going forward, that number is fixed until they revise it, right? So to that extent, no. But to the extent that they do a rebasing of value later, they will take a look at the amenities on the site and assign new valuation bases, and that will determine how much taxes you pay.
There's a number 10 there, and then after that, we can close.
Okay. Last question. This is from Aziza. How is the dam neighboring Acacia Cove currently used? Great. The dam next to Acacia Cove belongs to the county. It's a public dam. It pre-existed Acacia Cove. We just happened to buy the mother parcel that shares a boundary with the dam. It's currently used by the local pastoral community to water their livestock, their cows, sheep, and goats. When it drains in the rainy season, the water runs into the dam. It's mostly a seasonally fed dam. It's simply a catchment for surface water runoff after the rainy season, right? And it was initially a naturally occurring dam, but the county these days will dredge it every so often to clear the silt so that it holds a larger capacity. And when it overflows, the outflows go into Nanyuki River, just further down across from Juakali. And there it is used for watering plants. I have seen people bathe in the river and that sort of thing. So that's the current use. I know the county had an initiative to try and encourage people to use the dams for irrigating crops, cash crops, so tomatoes and herbs and that sort of thing. But that has not happened. And I think that will not be a sustainable way to use the dam because it only gets recharged after the rain, which means there are seasons when it does get a bit dry, as has happened now since the rains are late, countrywide mostly. The dam is at the lowest levels we have seen since 2012 when we were introduced to Kariunga in Nanyuki. So I hope that answers your question. And if you have any other questions, please feel free to send those through. Our live session has been recorded, and you'll be able to download or review it later. and we're happy to answer questions directly. If you want to give us a call, feel free to do so. We're very responsive on WhatsApp as well, so feel free to get us on WhatsApp. The number is 07 0001 0001. Again, that's 07 0001 0001, and someone will reach out to you. You're free to come to our offices, come say hello, have a coffee with us, investigate, ask questions, do your due diligence, and even if you're not buying land from us, we're happy to share our knowledge and learnings over time, so you're welcome to drop in.
So the one very important one, does the price go up for a land seller as you increase the value on the land?
Does the value or the price?
The price, the selling price go up as the land seller adds value to the land?
Does the price go up as a land seller adds value to the land? Is the Pope Catholic? Yes. I mean, that's a huge determinant of prices, is the value addition. Again, our office happens to be located in Lavington. Land prices in Lavington right now are somewhere in the range of 400 million an acre. If I cross the road into Kilimani, the price is different. If I go just down the road to Kawangware, the price is different, right? And that is all determined by amenities, meaning access to sewer. Are you on the sewer line or not? Do you have water lines? Do you have data? What are your roads like? Do you have good quality roads? Are you near a supermarket? Are you near a school? Are you near a hospital? And all the other things that human beings have to use on a daily basis. That's what determines the value and therefore the price. So yes, as we add value, typically as we add value to our sites, which is why we have early bird pricing, is we're inviting you to come and make a purchase early for a discounted rate because of what we are about to do. And as we execute on the value addition, the price does change, hands down, because we're providing you more. So if you're going to buy now versus later, you're going to be paying a very different price. And the same is true even after we are done selling. 2-3 years down the road, it's going to be a completely different story. Case in point, Olkekun in Naivasha, when we acquired the land, the development across the road did not exist. It was just an idea, a thought, a proposal. If you come to site today, we can cross the road and have a beautiful lunch at Art Cafe. There's a Naivas, there's a pharmacy, there's all sorts of amazing amenities for a human being to use in the course of their day, and that has changed the prices of land in that area. And even more so when we complete our value addition on Olkekun. So yes, answer is yes.
Okay. Last question. How many parcels of land are left at Acacia?
How many parcels of land are left at Acacia Cove? I believe there are about 31 plots left only out of 80. They are currently going, I think there's one plot left now for 3.99. Once we're done with value addition, we'll have the valuations redone, but we'll probably be in the range of 5 million shillings, maybe more. So again, you want to act quickly, investigate, do your DD, make sure you trust whoever is selling, whether you're buying from us or anyone else. The process is the same. Make sure that you believe that they will do what they're promising they will do, especially if they have a track record of doing this in the past or not. You know, if people show you who they are, believe them. Someone in the office said that today. Do your investigation and bust a move early, because today is the cheapest that land will ever be in Kenya. So I hope that answers your questions. Thank you for your time. I look forward to doing another live session. If you have questions that you'd like us to address for the next one, please send those through. So grateful for your time and for your attention. And I bless you all, and happy investing.
Why does your land cost as much as it does? So do I need a gabion fence? What am I supposed to tell my movers? geography in Nanyuki. I'm in Soms, one of my favorite places in Nanyuki. We're here to have breakfast with the Goshen Acquisitions team on our way to Acacia Cove, which is one of their sites. Thank you for the overwhelming response to my last video. An update is that I am managing to scramble some contracts here and there, and I mean, that's happening very well. So the money is coming for me to buy my piece of land, but it got me thinking, am I investing too much, especially for my first piece of land? We're talking about $10,000, and that's just my portion. And it also got me thinking about all the DMs that I get from my young movers about affordability of land and how a young person can afford land. To be quite frank, they're a good client. They allow me to do my thing, but I'm not sure if they'll allow this to make it to the video, because I want to ask some hard-hitting pertinent questions about their plans to give young Kenyans and young Africans access to land ownership as an investment. Today I might get into trouble, but Solomon, I'm coming for you. What are these?
Yeah, these are our gabion fence.
Yeah, can you see this fence?
Yes.
What is this? So Solo, I was telling Leon earlier, I'm not even sure if you're going to agree to answer some of these questions. Yeah, although seeing the fence, I can see where this conversation will go. So Solo, why does your land cost as much as it does?
Well, it's a fair question, and you have to look at each product for its own merit. So size being offered, what value comes along with it besides just the land or the space. Is there clean accessibility? What is the quality of the access roads? Is there power? Is there water? Is the scheme, the subdivision organized? Was it master planned? Or was it just chopped up into squares and rectangles by a surveyor? There's a very big difference. Those all come with costs. And so you have to look at everything in totality, as opposed to just comparing oranges and apples and expecting them to all cost the same.
Again, I'm going to take you back. So do I need a gabion fence? Do I need APs? You talked about a master plan with the best architects in the world. Why?
We could have done our subdivisions by working with a normal planner or a surveyor, as most people out here do. But we chose to work with Burkhartman and Associates. I wouldn't say they're the best architects in the world, but they're certainly one of the best in Kenya, because we wanted to honor the site. And if you'll notice, our master plan for Acacia Cove is not in a grid system.
No, it's not.
All the plots have very unique trapezoid shapes.
Solomon, you're telling me about waste. I just know I flush a toilet.
But we as land developers have to think about that, most especially when you're next to important geographic features like a dam, which is why we are doing sequential batch reactors, or SBR units, which are basically miniaturized sewage plants as opposed to the giant central sewage plants.
How about the road also? Because there's a section that was not tarmac. A very long section was tarmac, but there's a section that comes here that was not tarmac.
That's public access road, which we have already asked the county to allow us to upgrade.
So in the cove, you'll have public, what can I say?
Public utility spaces.
Exactly that. Please explain that.
At some point in the near future, there'll be 80 households within this compound. People with families, with children who will need places to play. The parents will need gathering places as a community to interact with one another, so garden spaces. You need space for your solid waste collection, in terms of garbage maintenance and control. All those are what are generally called public utility spaces, and they're actually required in the Physical Land Use and Planning Act processes.
If a young person, 20 to 25, wants to own a piece of land here at Acacia Cove, it's good to dream. Even Solomon's first piece of land, it was a dream that came true. Absolutely. Go back to A Day with a Mover and find out how this man bought his first piece of land in Kansas City. What can these people do, honestly? Because what am I supposed to tell my movers?
Think about getting together with other like-minded youth like yourself. There is no limit to how many of you can own the half acre. We're happy to negotiate friendly terms, specifically for the youth. as defined by the government of Kenya.
Meaning?
You have to be 35 and under.
Leon, you can't. Awesome, Solomon. We should start a youth club, Grand Acres Youth Club.
I agree.
We with Just Ivy. I've been told just start, don't wait.
Yes.
I'm going to write this proposal solo.
Done.
And then we see how young people will be able to afford land in Acacia Cove or other locations that...
Absolutely.
Yeah. Everything else looks normal.
Right.
You come here and then you're
Absolutely.
gabion fenced,
Right.
powered, watered, SBR'd. Okay. Trapezoid door. No, okay. 6 months ago, I had no idea how to speak land. I had no idea even what to say. If I was sold to land for 300K, I'd just buy it because, you know, people are buying it. But now that you've explained to the T what it is that I need to look for, I am very grateful for taking me on this journey.
You're most welcome. Thank you for allowing us the privilege to share our learnings and help you along that journey.
Yeah. My youth club, can we shake on it?
Done.
My friend, that is it.
Done.
Guys, bye.